Today on Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness, I'm joined by a truly remarkable guest. He's an author, speaker, and founder of Denali FSP, a consulting firm helping organizations secure sustainable funding. His powerful memoir, Rise and Thrivers, this book is amazing. It's called Becoming Ken, a black man's journey from Ivy League to prison and back again. He shares a story of resilience, redemption, and authenticity, absolutely. Through his keynotes and programs, like From Rock Bottom to Resilience, Ken inspires audiences to face adversity, embrace truth, and make meaningful life choices. Today, we'll explore the lessons he's learned from his journey and how he helps leaders and organizations create purpose-driven impact. Ken Miller, all the way from Washington, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, John. And I'm looking forward to the show. I'm looking forward to sharing with your audience. So let's get going.
Let's get going. Well, your book certainly is amazing, and wow, Ken, you're really putting yourself out there and authentically, and that's a real challenge for a lot of people to really expose themselves, so to speak, and really let them in into your journey with the meaning of inspiring others to action. For those that have not been, sorry, let me start again. For those that haven't seen your book before or know about it, how would you just describe it to them?
I would describe it as a book about an individual, actually a man, a black man in the United States that's been through a series of setbacks that he's been able to come back from childhood all the way up until late adulthood. And, having been to, let's say, the top, and I'm saying the top in that I had all the skill sets and or circumstances to be very, very successful at a young age. And then to throw all that away by some of the choices and decisions I made, but then to come back from that. And that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And some of those choices that you made that led you to some pretty dark places. And I'm just wondering how deep you want to go with that today. I'm happy to go.
I'll go as deep as the question. I'll go as deep as you want to go.
Yeah,
I can
okay.
go deep.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thanks, Ken. And of course you can, because you've got to put the book out there for the world to see.
It's in the book, okay?
Yeah, it's in the book. So what are those choices? Because sometimes as individuals we make those choices. Sometimes we don't realize the consequences, or we don't care about the consequences, or we're not aware of the responsibility from those choices. What are some of the choices that you made that took you to those dark places? Let's go there first, and then we'll rise up from there.
Oh, so many. So I'll just give you one example. I made a choice, a conscious decision to try crack cocaine. That was a conscious decision. And literally it did not work the first time I tried it. But I kept trying. I was a good drug addict. And I kept trying until it worked. And let me say this, because again, we're going to go somewhat deep, but I'm going to tell you some of my truths.
Great.
And one of my truths is that drugs work. Drugs work 100%. They work. A drug is a chemical, usually inert, that changes your perception of reality. That's what a drug does. I don't care if it's aspirin. I don't care if it's hydrocodone. I don't care if it's methamphetamines or crack cocaine or alcohol. They're drugs because they change your perception of reality. Whether you take, aspirin because you have a sore knee, or ibuprofen because you have pain in your knee, it changes your perception of the reality of the pain in your knee. It is a drug. Yeah. Whether I use crack cocaine to feel better because my father beat me as a child, or I lost the job, or whatever the reason or excuse is a better term that I use, I wanted to change my reality. And the reality is I felt less than. The reality is I had made some mistakes along the way. The
Mm.
reality was I'm an addict or an alcoholic on the streets. And so each and every day I chose to change that reality by becoming numb, by becoming high, by becoming, we used to have a term on the street called bent. We used to say,
Yep.
let's get bent. That means let's get crazy. Let's
Mm.
get bent
Mm.
through drugs. Let's change the perception of being conscious and let's go unconscious in our behavior, our decisions, and our interactions with others.
So you made that choice because you wanted to change your reality and maybe feel something different because of the reasons you explained. Did it occur to you at the time that these were going to have consequences down the track, or that didn't matter to you at the time? You just needed that reality change, and the pain was real and hard, and you wanted to escape from the pain.
It's not even a correction, but let me put another caveat to
Mm.
the reasons why I may have chose to use. In the end, and I'm talking about the last decade of my using, I did it because it was a habit.
Yeah.
We call it a drug habit. It's a habit. It's a
Mm.
habitual action that I would do because that's what I was comfortable doing, that habitual action of drinking every day and trying to my best extent smoke crack every day. So that's a habit. Other ones are, again, choices and decisions are,
Mm.
okay, can be the predecessor, the antecedent to the first use or the first few uses. But after that, I created a habit. I tell the story in the book. I took my first drink October of 1980, approximately. I was a full blown alcoholic 1 month later. Full blown alcoholic. I'd never drank before that.
Mm.
Within 1 month, I cannot with any certainty control the amount that I drink when I start, period. I believe that like it's in stone today. And I
Yeah.
understand that, but I didn't at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And so, can you share that turning point where you decided to rebuild your life?
Sure. Yeah. September 22nd, 2004. Probably 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, it was about five because I was waiting on the bus. So let's set the table so
Mm.
people have an understanding of where I came from and how I got to this point
Yep.
where I had the pivot.
Great.
So I was born in 1962. I'm 62 years old now. I'm a biracial child. My mother was a white teenage runaway, and my dad was a black pimp and drug dealer in New York. He impregnated my mother, and she put me up for adoption at birth. In the United States, biracial children weren't raised by 17-year-old Irish Catholic girls. Okay.
Mm. Yep.
So I was adopted, supposedly, by a white couple. And then 3 months later, I was put back into the system as a foster child because I was biracial. And they didn't know that when they first adopted me because they met me when I was a newborn. So I did 6 years of foster homes. And the key and most pivotal part about that is that I knew I had been abandoned.
Yeah.
I knew that I was alone and I had a core issue of my core issue was I was going to die alone. That's my core issue my whole life. So fear of rejection, abandonment. Okay, we'll get to that a little bit more. So I get adopted by Irene and Sam Miller, age 6, upstate New York. I was living, and then at age 12, I moved to Alaska. But when I was adopted, I was in first grade. I couldn't read, I could not write, I couldn't tell time, and I couldn't even tie my shoes because they foster homes were not teaching me those. So
Mm.
my mom taught me how to read that first summer, fell in love with the reading and what we call precocious. And I became a National Merit Scholar. I was accepted to Harvard University. I chose Dartmouth College, Ivy League, and went there and got my degree. That's why I was introduced to alcohol. I got out of college, graduated. My mom sent me to my first treatment center. I remained sober for 2 years. I relapsed because I'm thinking maybe I'm not an alcoholic. And then I was to spend the next 21 years homeless on the streets.
Wow.
And I was to go to prison 3 different times, spent years behind bars as a convicted felon. So I did 3 prison terms. So fast forward to 2004, September. My jaw's broken because I had my jaw broken on the streets in fights twice. Why even call them a fight? I'd been hit twice. I'd never hit the other guy and had my jaw broken, severely broken. And so my jaw's wired, and I go to get treatment one more time because I'm homeless. And I sell a $10 rock of crack cocaine to the undercover cop, and I'm hemmed up, handcuffed, waiting for the paddy wagon. And I'll never forget, I had tears streaming down my face. And the policeman was worried that I'd been hurt or something. I remember my jaw was wired. He said, "You all right? You all right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why are you crying?" And I told him, "I'm crying because I'm going to live. Because I can't do the streets. I'm suicidal.
Yeah.
I'll either get killed or someone would kill me. But I can do prison. I've been to prison twice. And I knew I was going to live." And then a month later, I had a conversation with God, or I listened to God. That's a better way of putting it. And he said very simply is that it's not going to be without discomfort. It's not going to be without pain. But this journey, I will be with you. And ever since then, I haven't had a problem wanting to pick up a mind-altering chemical volitionally.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Wow, Ken, that's really powerful. What I can hear there is, a number of us, we might have some limiting beliefs that stop us achieving until we become aware of them and break through of them. But your environment that you grew up in, you can really see how those beliefs might have entered your mind because of the life that you led as a child. For someone like me that came from a home with a couple of parents and was raised, and I'd say I had a great childhood. It sounds like someone like me, if I've got limiting beliefs, that's like pales into comparison between someone like yourself that has had to go through those kind of things through no fault of your own. It's just the cards life dealt you. And so I can really see how those beliefs might have been instilled in you because of what you had to deal with as a youngster.
What I talk about, and I like your term limiting beliefs, what I talk about a lot from the stage or when I'm working with men. So I mentor men all over the country for free, men of color. And I also have some men's groups that I run for free because I've been there, I've done that, and I have a skill set and things to teach people that have been successful for me. But let's go back to the limiting beliefs. What I talk about is scripts. I have scripts. And I have to play out those scripts when in certain situations and or input comes in. I have created this habitual script. Many of them are negative for me to deal with the world, or with, really, it's not even the world. I'm trying to deal with my self-talk.
Yeah.
Trying to deal with my self-talk. And one of the things that is my fundamental, and every person who I've ever worked with will tell you, my fundamental is truth. It's truth. That's my fundamental foundation to everything else, is what is, to the best estimation you can, what is truth. And when you can bring that truth into light, then you can work on the problem. But until you can articulate or define the problem, you cannot seek a solution.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But I love limiting beliefs because that, I could say that's almost an aspect of the scripts, at least for me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And And so from there and that decision that you made and that you've been walking on this path to I guess, heal yourself, and now you spend your time helping others through your book and through your keynotes and
Mhm.
through your programs. I, you've got a keynote, I believe, called From Rock Bottom to Resilience. And you sound like you've had to employ a lot of resilience in your life. And so I'm wondering, how do you bring that to your audiences?
So how I bring it, and a term we use is the comeback from the setback.
Yeah,
Word back to
love that.
back,
Love that.
alliteration, great.
Yep.
But it's not original to me, but I just want to say that's what I used to. So resilience is that ability to bend but not break and to come back to proper, okay? To come back to integrity, whether it's a structure, whether it's a tree, whether it's a human. And there are steps that I teach. But you said, how do I talk about this? What I do is I talk about stories. And the stories in the beginning, and there's stories I haven't even said on this podcast maybe yet or won't. But there's stories to allow you to relate to me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm talking to a business group, I'm going to tell you, I went to Dartmouth College. I was working for Kodak. I was working for 3M Corporation. I was wearing Hickey Freeman suits, Allen Edmonds shoes, silk ties, silk suspenders. I looked good, smelled good, walked good, and talked good, and I was a great salesman. I know the corporate world, was in there, did that. Okay. But then this is what happened to me. Go into that story. So we show the rise. It's called story arc.
Yeah.
We show the rise.
Yeah.
I'm at the top. I was making 50,000. And remember, I talk truth. I was making $50,000 a year in 1986 as a 22-year-old legally.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a
Yeah.
big part of that because I've made that kind of money, but not legally. Um, Legally, and when I get to that point, I mean, I had it all going on. I I just took. So I'm 6'2". I'm 200 pounds. I was very good looking. I used to model. I was a model. I've been in a movie. I mean, I've done things that, and plus this, I have no tattoos, even though I'm a 3-time convicted felon.
Hi. That's totally fine. That's all good.
My grandchild.
Yeah, great, awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
And so,
No,
right.
no,
So,
yeah, no problem. I've got a couple of kids, and sometimes they step in
man,
and really.
that's the
That's
second time he's come in. I'm like,
yeah,
my
that's,
wife,
that's
my mother-in-law,
yeah,
please.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I'm in a podcast.
That's
Anyway,
all right.
but that's the beautiful thing. You take that,
Mm,
we're gonna bounce back from that. That's gonna be an easy one. You can edit it or whatever, or you can
yeah,
keep it in. I don't care.
I'm keeping it
So
in.
let's
That's real
yeah.
life happening. Yeah.
So so I tell the story, I'm at the top, and then within literally 1 year, I'm at the bottom, even though I found out there was a deeper bottom than the bottom I thought I was in. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
But the key is, so I've made the dip. Now, can we have the redemption? Can we have the resilience? Can we have the comeback story?
Mm,
And unfortunately, at the level that I went to, very few people have that story.
yeah.
And my strength is I can articulate it. I can articulate it. I can talk about feelings. I can talk about events. I can talk about antecedents or what set up the stage for this to happen.
Mm,
And then I have the ability to put my shoes in other people's shoes, and I can forgive, and understand.
Yeah.
So I do that from the stage, maybe like it's an hour, let's say the keynote, the first, 20 minutes, half hour could be on getting to the pivot point.
Yeah.
And then how did I pivot? And how can you, listener, whether you're in live or recorded, how can you come back from the setback? And what does that entail? And
Yeah.
I can speak to that. I can speak to it now. I can speak to it when I go on stage, whatever.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm very interested in that, in how you pivot, because we all have times in our lives where things aren't necessarily going the way that we want them to go.
Okay.
My understanding of resilience, because I used to think it was, holding on tight in the storm and making sure that, you don't fall over. And now I've come to understand resilience as a lot to do with mindset. And as an example, a resilient person will believe there is no problem that doesn't have a solution. And you go on. Feel free to disagree as well.
Yeah.
You go.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, when I work with men, every man I work with, and I've worked with probably 40, 50 men. I'm working with 12 actively now. At one point, I had 29 men that I worked with. We always talk about problems. And the first thing that I say to individuals when we talk about problems, what is a problem? What's the definition? And
You asking me now, or
yeah, I'll ask you. Yeah,
yeah?
that's exactly how I work with my guys.
Well,
What's the definition?
something that's not working out, or it's not the way that you would like it to be, or it's hurting you, or yeah, it's a good
Okay,
question.
it's a very good question.
Yeah.
But and one of the for people especially who haven't worked with me for a while, we have to think broader first of all. So, what's a math problem? We
Yeah.
had them when we were in kids. What's a
Yeah.
math problem?
Yeah. Well, it's
Give me an example of a math problem.
1 + 3 = 4.
Well, you gave the problem and the solution.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But and it was so weird because I was reading this somewhat intellectual book. Anyway, I was reading something that was pretty intellectual, and they were talking about sets and they were talking about numbers, and it blew me away. But this is what I teach when I work with guys, especially individually. I said 2 + 2 is not a problem. 2 + 2 is not a problem. 2 + 2 is a statement. 2 + 2 equals is a problem. But you got to have the equal sign, or more than, or less than. Because what a problem is, hear this. A problem is a set of circumstances that seeks a solution. The set of circumstances, 2 + 2 more, equals is seeking a solution. So every problem in your life, if you define it as a problem, is a set of circumstances that seeks a solution. But you got to be seeking the solution, and you've got to ask the right question. You got to have the right problem. You can deflect and have a problem over here, but the real problem is here. A lot of times we think the problem is our partner, is our wife, our husband, our boss, the judge, the police. That's not the problem. It's not the problem. Okay. The problem, the true problem, is a set of circumstances, and that you deal with life that causes friction with society and the community. That's what I did. I caused friction. And that friction got people hurt. That friction pimped teenage girls. That friction sold drugs to your son. And that friction burglarized your home. That's my friction. That's the problem. The problem wasn't the police or the judge or the victims. The problem was me. Okay. So we've identified a set of circumstances, and this is a tough one for a lot of people, is what is a set of circumstances? So we're talking about resilience. We're talking about coming back.
Mm.
I go into prison for the third time. I've been sentenced to 6 years, but hear this. Judge Hardesty, who's the judge I got every time, well, last 2 times, for my felonies, because they put you in front of the same Superior Court judge in Reno, Nevada. He said, Mr. Miller, the next time you come into my courtroom with a felony, I am giving you the habitual criminal statute, which would have been 25 to life for stealing $51. That's a felony in the state of Nevada.
Mm.
So any felony would have been 25 to life. Somebody told me a few years ago, do you believe him? Did you believe him? I said, I still believe him. What do you mean?
Yeah.
21 years later, I still believe him, even
Yeah.
though he's on the Supreme Court now for Nevada, for the state of Nevada. But let's go back. So I've identified my problem. My problem is me.
Mm.
But what about me is the problem that seeks a solution? So I went in the penitentiary and I said to myself, number one, if I am the same person coming out of prison that I am going in, I'm going to have the same results I had the first 2 times,
Yeah.
which is I went right back on the streets and went back to drug dealing and pimping and all the other junk I did.
Mm.
So I said, my problem, obvious, is physical. I came in there because I've been smoking crack, 165 pounds. I'm 205 this morning, 40 pounds of muscle. So I started working out, ended up setting some records on the yard. We call it the yard in prison as a power lifter. Cool, taken care of. Intellectual. I got a problem with intellectual. My vocabulary shrunk. This is a Ivy League history and English major whose vocabulary had shrunk because
Right.
it's no use.
Mm.
I would read a paragraph in a book, a paragraph, and I could not tell you when I got to the end of the paragraph what the first sentence said. No comprehension.
Right.
I'm not using that. And my vocabulary, 20% of the words I couldn't use on this podcast because that's the way we talk on the streets.
Sure.
Okay. Scripts. Okay. So I started reading again. In 2005, my second year, 2006, my second year in the penitentiary, I did 3 years on this last bit. I read 160 books. Fact. I can show it to anyone because I write down every single book I read. I just last year hit my 1,000th book. Okay. So we've got intellectual, we've got physical. Now, and I want people who are listening, think about this. What areas do I need to work on?
Yeah.
Then I said, I have a problem, and I have a big problem with emotional. Probably my biggest problem was emotional and feelings because I felt less than, I felt shame-based, I felt anger, I felt the overriding fear. Well, the overriding emotion is fear. I lived in fear on the streets almost every day because I'd rip off drug dealers and I always had a warrant out for my arrest. Always had a warrant out for my arrest because I never showed up for court. Okay, it's called failure to appear. So I needed to work, and the big one was shame. I had to work on shame because my big secret was I was a male prostitute. I was a prostitute. I sold myself on the streets. That was and I didn't want anybody to know that. Don't really want people to know that in the penitentiary.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to know it on the streets. It's in my book. I talk about it from the stage. I've taken away. I have no secrets. Zero. See that number? Zero. I have no secret. There's things I won't share with you about my wife or family, but about me, open book. Open book. It depends on you. Yeah. So I went into I went and got counseling, and I'll never forget there. I go in there, I talk to the counselor, and I say to her, how many people will you counsel? Because there's 1,100 men on the yard. And she wasn't supposed to tell me, but we had built enough relationships. She said, two men. Probably every single man in the penitentiary could use some counseling. Believe me on that.
Yeah.
But I was there. That's the key. I was there. And it was the first place I could talk about my secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started there. Then I went to small groups, then I went to larger groups, and then now I can get in front of thousands and put it in a book. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's just shame. There was other emotional, there's guilt. There's some things about guilt that I had to deal with. There's things about the power of words, which I didn't deal with in the penitentiary. I had to deal with that when I got out. And then the fourth area is spiritual.
Yep.
And I tried to, and I went to the Islamic, tried that. I tried some Christian. I tried just reading the Bible. And what I mean, I have a God in my life.
Yeah.
I have a spiritual entity that modifies my behavior. So having done all those four areas, you're talking about how we bounce back from the setback.
Yeah.
That got me to the foundation where then I could start working on the true resilience and knowing what I know about coming back from the setback. It starts, number one, once you've worked on or are working on the number one is truth. What's really going on? What really happened to make this a setback? Question? I can go on, but question?
Oh yeah, no, I'm mesmerized.
Okay.
Keep
I
going,
think my
Ken.
question as I go along.
Yeah, no, I'm loving everything you're saying and hanging on every word.
Yeah, the foundation is truth. And see, again, because you're trying to find out what are the set of circumstances. And this is why it wasn't even a pushback, because this was a real important lesson I had to learn. If someone disagrees with something you say, 99% of the time, they're not disagreeing with you as a person. They're disagreeing with your quote unquote take, argument, thoughts. Doesn't mean you're wrong. See, when somebody disagreed with me, I thought they were saying I'm wrong.
Yeah.
One of the biggest fundamental things I teach on is shame versus guilt. Guilt says I did something bad. Shame says I am something bad.
Yeah, right.
One is the verb to be in French, or être, which is the verb to be. It's a state of being as opposed to a state of doing. Mm-hmm. I'm guilty of everything I've done, but I'm not that person. Okay? One says I did something, I can't use the word. One says I did something poorly. One says I am a poor person or less than. I use the term a lot, less than. So I had to get away from articulating any type of negative feedback as saying that I'm less than, I'm not worthy. I teach on self-esteem. One of my favorite, probably my favorite subject to teach on more than resilience is self-esteem.
Yeah.
My book club is called the 6 Pillars, Black Men's Book Study and Discourse Group. Why is it named that? Because the first book we ever read was the 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem by Nathaniel Branden, which is you could call it my textbook.
Yeah, right.
Okay? And his fundamental is truth. This is not original. A lot of this is not original. There is some parts that are not in his book that I talk about, because I talk about courage. He doesn't talk about courage a lot in his book, but I talk about courage a lot. And to be resilient, you have to have courage.
Yeah.
You have to have courage. Okay.
Yeah. And I like your take on there about the difference between the person and the idea in a way. Yeah. And because it is so easy, we see it so often, and I guess as human beings, depending on our circumstances, that can be a default position where, like you say, if you do get feedback or criticized, you start thinking, I'm a bad person, or they're criticizing me as a person rather than the idea. the thought that I'm putting forward. So it's a really, really good distinction, and a really good one to be empowered while you are getting that feedback, to allow you to actually hear it. Because once you start taking it personally or thinking that it's an attack on yourself, I'm sure that, we lose the lesson and the gift that the feedback might be. You hear people say feedback's a gift, and I believe it is. But as you say, only if you can take it as not a personal attack on yourself.
I think you're going to find this interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on Rise and Thrive Conversations for Greatness with John Merkus. Remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you do matter. Embrace the journey of personal growth and motivation. Let's go out there and do something great. Follow or subscribe for more insights and inspiration every Tuesday. Until next time, stay awesome.